I was getting married, but my boyfriend of 8 years didn't know. Lately, Lucas had been busy with his new secretary, Celine. They bonded instantly and celebrated her birthday with a 10-layer cream cake, forgetting I'm severely allergic. I ended up in the hospital. When I got out, I agreed to the arranged marriage my family had proposed. My mother sent me dozens of wedding plans. "The wedding is in 3 days," she said. "Take your time packing." I sighed and messaged her back, "Pick whatever you like. Let's keep it simple." That's when Lucas appeared behind me. "Wedding? What wedding?" Before I could respond, his phone rang. A panicked voice came through. "Lucas, someone's following me. I'm scared." Without another word, he ran off. Later that day, I called my aunt to say goodbye. When she assumed I was marrying Lucas, I corrected her. "It's an arranged marriage. I don't even know the guy." She was shocked but supported my decision. The next evening, I ran into Lucas and Celine carrying groceries together, like a couple moving in. "Don't misunderstand," he said. "Her old place wasn't safe, so I found her a new one." I simply replied, "No need to explain. These are just gifts from my mom for my aunt." Lucas looked relieved. He still didn't realize I was leaving for good. A while later, I received a voice message from Celine. "Lucas is helping fix the wiring. Don't wait for us. And please don't overthink it, he's just being kind." As I sat in a cab heading home, Lucas called. "Why were you so harsh to Celine?" I heard her soft sobs in the background. "Yeah, my bad," I replied flatly. "Don't worry. I'm already home." Back at my apartment, I saw Celine's group chat post. "A boss who fixes your wiring? I'd sign a lifetime contract." Replies poured in, full of praise. Before Celine joined, I was the one helping Lucas with everything, quietly, willingly. But once she took over, he erased all trace of me. That night, I packed my things. I found a photo album Lucas gave me 8 years ago. He promised me 9,999 surprises before we married. The album was nearly full, just one blank page left. But it meant nothing now. I took it downstairs, lit a match, and watched it burn. Lucas arrived, panicked. He tried to save it, burning his hands. "What the hell are you doing? Are you insane?" I said nothing. He pulled me into his arms, overwhelmed with regret. "Let's retake all the photos. We'll start over." I pulled away. "If you want to make it up to me, throw me a proper birthday party for once." He hesitated, then nodded. But his phone rang, Celine's ringtone. "Work emergency," he said, already backing away. The next day, people came to decorate for the party, including Celine. She claimed she designed everything, but it looked exactly like her own birthday setup. Smirking, she asked, "Do you like it?" My eyes went to the necklace she wore, one I'd lost. "A second-hand setup for a second-hand person," I said coldly. Offended, she smashed a glass ornament and cut her foot. Lucas stormed in and slapped me enough. "She took a day off to help you, and this is how you repay her?" He carried her out. I sat alone in the silent room. The next morning, no one showed up. Lucas had been my only friend for a decade. I cut a slice of the cake I couldn't eat, stuck a single candle in it, and made a wish: may we never meet again. When my phone chimed, signaling the end of my countdown, I picked up my suitcase and left. On the way to the airport, I sent Lucas one last message. "Let's end things here. There's no need to stay in touch." The plane ride was quiet, just like the voice inside me that had screamed for years, now silenced. As the city lights shrank below, so did the weight of the last decade. I wasn't running away. I was finally choosing myself. When I landed, a driver holding a sign with my name escorted me to a black sedan. My mother had arranged everything. True to her style, nothing was left to chance. The resort where the wedding would be held stood nestled between 2 forested hills, a quiet luxury estate far from the chaos of the city, and from Lucas. At check-in, the receptionist bowed slightly. "Welcome, Miss Ellie. The bridal suite is ready. Madam requested the finest amenities." I smiled politely, trying not to feel like a guest in my own life. "Thank you." The suite was almost absurd in its elegance. Ivory curtains, gold fixtures, marble floors that reflected my hesitation back at me. A dress hung by the window, custom, pristine, untouched. On the desk lay a sealed envelope. I opened it to find my mother's familiar cursive. Greater than Ellie, this is a turning point. I know this wasn't what you dreamed, but sometimes we don't choose our blessings until later. Trust me, this man is worthy. Rest well. We'll talk tomorrow. I didn't know the groom. Not even his name. Only that his family was well matched and from a long-standing alliance my parents respected. All I wanted was peace. No more begging for attention. No more being the afterthought. I spent the next day mostly alone, sipping tea on the balcony, staring at pine trees swaying in the breeze. My phone buzzed now and then, ignored. I wasn't ready to re-engage with the world I'd left. Until one message popped up. Aunt Mina. Greater than heard you're already at the resort. Brave girl. Your uncle says you have your mother's courage. Do call me if you get cold feet, all right? Warmth spread through my chest. She had always been my soft landing. Later that evening, a knock at the door. I expected staff. But standing there was a man in a charcoal suit, tall and poised, his eyes dark with quiet amusement. Miss Ellie? I nodded cautiously. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Lee. He apologizes for not meeting you sooner, urgent business trip. He'll arrive on the morning of the ceremony. Mr. Lee? I repeated. He bowed slightly. Your fiancé. So that was his name, Lee. No first name, no photo, no conversation. Just Lee. I almost laughed. But I didn't. Instead, I thanked the assistant and returned to the suite. A part of me whispered that I should care more, that I should want love, fireworks, romance. But maybe this time, quiet stability would be enough. After dinner, I walked the candlelit gardens alone. The hush of the wind and flicker of lanterns were oddly comforting. I passed a couple laughing by a fountain, her hand in his, and felt no pang of envy. I had loved once, deeply, blindly. And it had cost me everything. Back in the suite, I opened my journal. The same one I hadn't touched since before the hospital. Entry, day -1. Greater than tomorrow I marry a stranger. But for the first time in years, I feel like I belong to myself again. Maybe love doesn't come with a promise. Maybe it comes later. But dignity. That, I can choose now. As I set the journal aside, my phone buzzed again. Lucas. I stared at the screen. Lucas. Greater than where are you? Why did you leave without saying goodbye? Then. Greater than Ellie, please. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Then. Greater than I miss you. I read each message slowly, then pressed block. I didn't owe him closure. Not after 10 years of delayed birthdays and broken promises. I curled up on the bed, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat. For once, I wasn't waiting on someone to show up. I was already here, for myself. Tomorrow, I would meet my husband. But tonight, I celebrated something far more sacred than love. Freedom. The morning of the wedding arrived with a gray sky and soft drizzle, as if the heavens had decided to stay quiet with me. I stood by the window in a silk robe, watching raindrops race down the glass like competing memories. Some of Lucas, some of childhood, and others, yet to be written. The makeup artist arrived early, followed by the stylist, the florist, and a string of assistants who moved like clockwork. I barely spoke. I didn't need to. My mother had planned this day like a general preparing for war. At precisely 10, she walked in with that familiar mix of pride and pressure on her face. You look beautiful, she said, scanning me from head to toe. I smiled faintly. You're early. Of course I am. This isn't just a wedding. It's a statement. Statement to whom? She didn't answer. Instead, she handed me a thin box. This belonged to your grandmother. Inside was a hairpin, jade and gold, delicate and old-fashioned. It felt heavier than it looked. A legacy passed down not out of sentiment, but expectation. Thank you, I said simply. She adjusted the pin into my hair herself, a rare moment of intimacy. Then, as if remembering herself, she stood tall and nodded toward the door. "Let's not keep the groom waiting." The ceremony was set in a garden beneath an arch of white roses and willow branches. Despite the rain, the venue team had transformed the place into something out of a fairy tale. My heels crunched softly on gravel as I stepped down the aisle, flanked by guards of protocol, not love. I didn't know what I expected. But the moment I saw him, my breath caught. Mr. Lai, my future husband, stood waiting in a tailored black suit, expression calm but unreadable. His posture straight, eyes fixed on me with a look I couldn't decipher. Not lust, not affection, something closer to curiosity, maybe. Quiet interest. He bowed slightly as I approached. "Ellie," he said, offering his arm. "Lee," I returned, slipping my hand into his. The ceremony was brief. Vows written by someone else, recited like a business merger. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," we both hesitated for half a second, then Lee leaned forward, kissed my forehead gently, and turned toward the guests. I was now someone's wife. The reception was a blur of handshakes, speeches, toasts. I learned his full name, Lee Zhenyu, and that he was a second-generation CEO of a defense tech company based in Singapore. His mother was an investor. His father, long retired. No siblings. No scandals. No warmth either, but no games. At one point, while sipping champagne, I finally asked, "Why did you agree to this?" He didn't blink. Because arranged marriages still offer something most relationships can't: clarity. No false expectations. No illusions. "And what do you expect from me?" "To act with dignity. To live without dishonor. The rest we'll figure out." It wasn't the answer I dreamed of. But it wasn't a lie either. As the evening wound down, guests began to disappear into the misty night. A car waited to take us to the honeymoon villa, a symbolic weekend retreat arranged by our families. Lai didn't offer his hand again, but he held the door open and nodded for me to enter. I did. The villa was tucked into a mountainside, its windows wide and its silence deeper than I liked. Once inside, I kicked off my shoes and walked to the window, arms crossed. "You can have the master room," he said, setting his phone on the table. "I'll take the study." "You don't have to do that." "I know," he replied. "But I will." For the first time all day, I turned to face him directly. "I'm not broken, you know." His eyes softened, just a fraction. "Neither am I, but let's not pretend we're in love. Let's give each other space to become something real, or at the very least, mutually respectful." It was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in years. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't in love. I wasn't even in pain. I was in between, the quiet middle ground where recovery begins. Lucas hadn't called again. And I no longer hoped he would. Outside, the rain fell quietly through the trees. Beside me on the nightstand sat the jade hairpin. Its weight no longer felt like a burden. Maybe, just maybe, this could be a beginning. The morning light filtered in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, washing the villa in gold. I opened my eyes slowly, half forgetting where I was. The silk sheets felt too crisp, too new. For a brief second, I reached across the bed, instinctively expecting someone to be there. But the space beside me was untouched. Of course. Lee had kept his word. No pretense. I wandered into the kitchen, hair uncombed, still in my robe. To my surprise, a light breakfast had been laid out. Fresh fruit, tea, warm congee. A note rested beside the tray. "Greater than didn't want to disturb your rest. I'll be hiking nearby. Take the day for yourself, Elle." I held the note longer than necessary. His handwriting was clean, deliberate. Like everything else about him. After breakfast, I spent the morning exploring the villa. It was stunning, but sterile. Designed for display, not for living. No framed photos, no forgotten mugs or soft blankets. Just curated elegance. I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. The woman staring back looked polished, dignified, married. But her eyes. They were still searching. By afternoon, I needed air. I slipped on sneakers and followed the cobblestone path leading through the trees. Pine needles crunched underfoot. The scent of wet bark and distant mist made me feel small, but not in a bad way. Half an hour in, I heard footsteps on the trail ahead. And then I saw him. Lee. Sweat clung to his shirt, his sleeves rolled up, collar loose. He didn't look like a tech CEO now, he looked human, almost young. "You found my trail," he said with a small smile. "I needed to move," I replied. He nodded, stepping aside to let me catch up. We walked in silence for a while, but it wasn't awkward. Just quiet, mutual. At a lookout point, he paused. Below us stretched a valley blanketed in fog. "Do you like hiking?" he asked. "I used to," I said. "But I stopped doing things for myself a long time ago." "Because of him?" I turned to face him, not expecting the question. "I guess so," I said. "Or maybe I just forgot what I liked. When someone else's needs fill every corner of your life, you start mistaking them for your own." He didn't push further. He just nodded, like he understood. After a beat, he said, "I was engaged once." I blinked. "Really?" He nodded. 3 years ago. Her name was May. My family adored her. She wanted everything planned, where we'd live, what kind of children we'd have, how many parties to host every year. I liked her clarity. But one day she just left. No fight. No warning. Just a letter on the counter. What did the letter say? That she didn't want to be owned. That I was building a future without asking what she wanted. "And were you?" He considered that. "Probably," he admitted. "I thought compromise meant shaping someone to fit into your life. I didn't realize it meant reshaping yourself too." For a long moment, we stood there in shared silence. Then I said quietly, "I used to think love was staying no matter how much it hurt. Now I think love might be knowing when to stop bleeding for someone who won't even offer a bandage." Lai looked at me, not with pity, but with recognition. "You're not wrong." By the time we returned to the villa, it was nearly sunset. I took a long bath, letting the lavender oil soften the tension in my shoulders. Dinner arrived shortly after, prepared by the estate chef, though Lee and I ate at opposite ends of the same table. He raised his glass. "To small truths," he said. I raised mine in return. "And quiet beginnings." That night, I slept more soundly. Not because I was happy, but because, for the first time, I wasn't waiting for a lie to unravel. And in the room across the hall, behind paper walls, slept a stranger who didn't demand love or obedience, but offered space. Maybe that was enough. For now. We returned from the villa 2 days later, not quite husband and wife in the traditional sense, but not strangers either. Something had settled between us during that quiet mountain retreat. Not romance, not yet. But a kind of respect. An agreement that we were two people learning how to be whole beside one another, not under or behind. Lai dropped me off at my mother's house before heading to a conference out of town. No kiss, no lingering gaze. Just a courteous nod and a soft "take care, Ellie." I walked through the familiar front door to a flurry of congratulations, tea, and awkward family chatter. But none of it felt like home anymore. My mother proudly introduced me as Mrs. Lee to every neighbor and cousin who dropped by. I smiled politely, nodded, and went upstairs to the guest room. My old bedroom had already been converted into a home gym. I didn't stay long. The next morning, I returned to my Aunt Mina's apartment. The moment she opened the door, she pulled me into a long, warm hug. No questions. No judgment. Just a quiet, steady love I hadn't even realized I'd missed. "You look lighter," she said, brushing my hair behind my ear. "And not because you've lost weight." "Maybe I finally let go of something heavy," I replied. I spent the day with her, reorganizing her spice shelf, helping fix her curtain rod, and cooking together like we used to. The simple domesticity felt more intimate than any ceremony. That night, as we sat watching an old drama on TV, there was a knock at the door. I froze. Aunt Mina gave me a curious look and stood to answer it. And there he was. Lucas. He looked tired. Wrinkled shirt, dark circles under his eyes, and that same scent he always wore, black opium. It used to make my heart race. Now it made my stomach turn. "Hi, Aunt Mina," he said sheepishly. "May I speak with Ellie?" She hesitated, then looked at me. "It's your choice." I stood slowly, my heart beating loud but steady. I walked to the door, blocking it with my body. "You're not supposed to be here," I said. "I know. I needed to talk, please. I don't think there's anything left to say." Lucas looked over my shoulder into the apartment. "You're living here now?" "No. Just visiting someone who never let me forget who I am." He swallowed hard. "Ellie, I didn't mean for things to go this way. That night, at the party, Celine wasn't supposed to." "Wasn't supposed to what?" I cut in. "Steal my life? Wear my necklace? Cry on cue?" His face twisted in guilt. "I was stupid, okay? I didn't realize how far things had gone. But when I saw you burn those photos, God, Ellie, that destroyed me." I took a deep breath. "No, Lucas. I destroyed myself, piece by piece, waiting for you to love me properly. I gave you 8 years. And you gave me silence, excuses, empty birthdays. A cake that could have killed me." He looked like he wanted to argue, to explain. But for once, he didn't. Instead, he pulled something from his coat pocket. It was a small velvet box. Inside, a thin gold ring with a blue sapphire. "I bought this the day after our 3rd anniversary," he said quietly. "I carried it around for years. Always telling myself, not yet, not now, maybe next month. But I never gave it to you." I stared at the ring for a long moment, then gently closed the box. "I don't want it," I said. "Not anymore." Lucas nodded slowly. "Is it because of him? Your husband?" I hesitated. "No," I said. "It's because of me." And I meant it. He left without another word. I returned to the couch, sat beside my aunt, and said nothing. She passed me a piece of sweet red bean cake and squeezed my hand gently. "You chose yourself," she whispered. "That's the hardest thing to do." I nodded. The next morning, I packed my things and returned to the apartment Lee had offered. The doorman greeted me with a bow. A welcome basket waited at the door. Inside was a handwritten card. "Greater than Ellie. I've added your name to the lease. Not because I expect you to stay forever. But because I want you to know this place is as much yours as it is mine. L." I placed the note gently on the table, sat on the couch, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. Not from heartbreak, but from relief. The apartment was quiet in the way a sanctuary should be, no footsteps rushing past the door, no voices raised in accusation, no trace of Lucas's cologne on the sheets. Just stillness. The kind that makes you realize how long you've lived bracing for noise. I unpacked slowly, carefully. Not out of fear, but intention. Each item I folded into drawers felt like a small reclaiming. My favorite mug, the poetry book I used to read at lunch, the necklace I found again in my aunt's drawer after I thought I'd lost it forever. There was no sign of Lai that day. He was still traveling, attending back-to-back summits, according to the brief text he'd sent the night before. "Greater than take your time settling in. I trust your taste more than my decorators." Simple, respectful. No expectation. The next morning, I received an email from a boutique publishing house I'd forgotten I'd submitted to during a particularly sleepless week months ago. They wanted to publish my short story. I sat frozen for nearly 5 minutes. The story I wrote in the corners of the old apartment, back when I used to wait hours for Lucas to come home. The one about a woman who vanished without saying goodbye and started over in a city where no one knew her name. Maybe it wasn't a coincidence. I called Aunt Mina first. She shrieked so loudly I had to pull the phone away. "Ellie," she gasped. "You're finally writing again. You see? When you cut dead things from your life, new things bloom." I laughed, wiping away a tear I hadn't noticed. "It's just one story." "No," she said. "It's your story." That evening, I set up a small desk by the window and opened a fresh document. The words came slower now, but with more truth. There was no more pressure to be impressive, no audience to win back. Just me. And I was enough. 2 days later, I was curled up reading when the door unlocked. Lee stepped in quietly, dressed in a simple navy sweater and slacks, suitcase in hand. He looked tired, but composed. "You're back," I said, standing. He nodded. "Just landed." I watched as he noticed the changes. The vase of lilies on the table, the books on the shelf, my cardigan draped over the armrest. But he didn't comment. Instead, he toed off his shoes and poured himself a glass of water. After a moment, he turned to me. "Congratulations, by the way." I blinked. "On what?" He held up his phone. "Your story. It's been trending on their site all day." I flushed. "You read it?" He gave a small nod, twice. Silence stretched between us. Then, he asked, "The main character. Was she you?" "Parts of her," I admitted. "But not all." "She disappeared without leaving a note," he said. "You, on the other hand, left one final message." I tilted my head. "Do you think that makes her weaker?" "No," he replied. "Just braver in a different way." I didn't know what to say to that. He placed his glass down. "I'm glad you're here, Ellie. Not just in this apartment. But here. As you are." For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not affection. Not possession. Possibility. That night, we cooked together. Not in a romantic montage kind of way. We argued over whether the noodles were overcooked and which soy sauce brand was better. But we laughed. We moved comfortably around each other. When the meal was done, we ate in the glow of city lights through the glass. Two people not in love, but not in exile either. He paused with his chopsticks halfway to his mouth. "Would you ever write about us?" I thought for a second. Maybe. One day. But only if it becomes a story worth telling. He smiled, just slightly. "Then let's make it worth something." After dinner, I sat at my desk, listening to the low hum of the dishwasher and the rain tapping at the window. I opened my journal and wrote. "Greater than I am no longer a ghost in my own life. I have a room with my name on the lease. I have a voice. And for the first time, I think I might have a future. Not because of who I married. But because I married myself first." The days passed with a kind of quiet rhythm. I found a freelance editorial project through one of Aunt Mina's old contacts. Lee and I shared the apartment like respectful tenants, sometimes exchanging long, silent dinners, sometimes talking about things that didn't touch the heart, like taxes, tech news, or groceries. It was peaceful. So peaceful that for a while, I let myself believe the past was truly over. Until it knocked. Literally. I was editing a draft by the window one morning when the doorbell rang. Expecting a delivery, I padded barefoot to the intercom. I pressed the button and heard nothing. Then came the second knock. Slower, heavier. I opened the door. Celine. Dressed immaculately in cream, holding a black umbrella, and somehow still managing to look delicate despite the thunderclouds above. She gave me a tight-lipped smile, as if this were a planned brunch date. "Ellie," she breathed. "I was hoping we could talk." My stomach sank, but I stepped aside. She entered, looking around like she was inspecting something she expected to find lacking. "This is a nice place," she said, trailing her fingers over the edge of the dining table. "Did he decorate it?" "Lie? No," I replied, folding my arms. "He let me choose what I wanted." "That's generous," she said, lips twitching. "Lucas would never." I cut her off. "Why are you here, Celine?" She took a breath. "I broke up with Lucas." I blinked. "You were dating?" She paused. "Not officially. But you know how it was. He needed someone. I was there." I said nothing. Let the silence speak. Celine walked over to the window and stared out at the skyline. "He's not taking it well." "That's not my concern." She turned. "It should be. He's been drinking. Missing work. He calls me every night asking about you. I swallowed hard but kept my voice even. That's not my problem anymore. She frowned. You really don't care? After all that time together? Caring, I said quietly, nearly killed me. She studied me for a long moment. Then said the one thing I didn't expect. I didn't mean to hurt you. I tilted my head. Then what exactly were you trying to do? I wanted someone to choose me, she said, voice trembling. For once. And suddenly, I saw it. The jealousy. The need. The endless game of comparison she'd been playing in her mind long before I even knew she existed. But I was done being someone else's measuring stick. I hope you get the help you need, I said firmly. But this chapter is closed. She stood there, tears rising, lips twitching between a smile and a sob. Then she nodded, pulled the umbrella tighter to her chest, and walked out. I closed the door behind her. Locked it. Turned the bolt slowly, like sealing away a ghost. That night, Lee came home to find me curled on the couch, sipping hot water. He loosened his tie, then sat beside me without a word. She came today, I said softly. He didn't ask who. He didn't need to. Do you want to talk about it? No, I whispered. I want to forget she was ever real. He nodded. Then let's create something real enough to replace her. I looked at him. In that moment, Lee didn't feel like a stranger. He felt like someone who had also been haunted. We sat there, side by side, staring at nothing in particular. The lights outside flickered like little worlds we hadn't explored yet. And for once, I didn't feel like I needed to look back. Because the future was finally quiet. Finally mine. Winter crept in quietly, dusting the city in soft gray and silver. From our high-rise apartment, I watched as street vendors swapped iced drinks for roasted chestnuts, and school children bundled in scarves chased the last orange leaves down the sidewalks. The season felt reflective, like the world itself was slowing down, taking inventory. So was I. Lee's presence had grown familiar, but never invasive. He was steady in a way that calmed the ache I didn't know I still carried. He asked questions that didn't pry. Made space without retreating. Most nights we shared dinner, discussed our days, and occasionally, on colder evenings, read in quiet companionship until sleep called us to separate rooms. It was strange. This non-love that was somehow beginning to resemble something deeper than infatuation ever had. One Sunday morning, as I folded fresh laundry, I found a shirt of his tucked between mine. I stood there, holding it for longer than I should have, before hanging it in my closet without thinking. And when I glanced over at the mirror, I caught my own expression. Soft. At peace. Later that week, we hosted our first dinner together. Not a party. Just Aunt Mina and one of Lee's childhood friends from Singapore, Ethan, a data scientist with sharp eyes and too many jokes. I cooked. Lee set the table. And when Mina teased us for moving in sync like an old married couple, I didn't flinch. After dessert, she pulled me aside while the men discussed something technical and boring in the living room. You like him, she said simply. I gave her a look. That's a dangerous assumption. She smiled. It wasn't a question. I sighed, resting my back against the kitchen counter. He doesn't ask for anything. Not even love. Maybe especially not love. Mina studied me for a moment. You're not afraid he won't love you. You're afraid you will. And she was right. Because somewhere along the quiet mornings, the grocery lists, the shared silences, I had started to hope. A few days later, I came home to find a package on the kitchen table. Lee stood nearby, hands in his pockets. You got something, he said. From your publisher. I opened it slowly, finding a first print of my story collection, my name embossed on the cover. Inside was a note. Greater than you have a gift. Thank you for letting us share it with the world. Lee watched as I traced the edges of the cover like it was something sacred. I read the final draft, he said after a pause. I looked up. And? You made me cry. I blinked. You don't seem like the crying type. I'm not, he said. That's what made it confusing. I smiled. Then he reached behind him and held out a simple bouquet, white tulips, my favorite. For the author in residence, he said. It was the first gift he had given me. No grand gesture. No performance. Just flowers, honest, unwrapped. I don't know what we're becoming, I whispered, holding the bouquet like a promise. But I'm not afraid anymore. Neither am I. There was a pause, long and full. And then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, Lee reached out and took my hand. No fireworks. Just warmth. Real, steady, undeniable. And for the first time since I left Lucas behind, I felt chosen. Not for my loyalty. Not for convenience. Not for sacrifice. But for who I was becoming, on my own terms. A few weeks later, an envelope arrived, thick ivory cardstock, embossed edges, no return address. I recognized the handwriting before I opened it. Lucas. My fingers trembled, but I kept my expression calm. I wasn't the same woman who used to chase closure. Still, curiosity burned like a cold flame as I unfolded the invitation. Greater than you're invited to the grand reopening of Solstice and Company. To honor the ones who built the foundation. Lucas Wong, Managing Director. It was our old company. The one I helped build in silence, in shadows, beside him. The invitation was as much a performance as it was a provocation. He wanted me to see him, rebuilt, rebranded, recovered. He wanted me to remember. But what Lucas didn't know was that I no longer did. I placed the card on the counter and returned to my manuscript. I had deadlines to meet. That night, I told Lee. He was in the kitchen, chopping scallions for stir-fry. He didn't flinch. Are you going? No, I said quickly. At least, I wasn't planning to. He turned to face me. Then don't go for him. I hesitated. But maybe I should go for me. He studied me for a moment, then nodded once. Then wear something that makes you feel invincible. The night of the event, I wore navy silk and my grandmother's jade pin. My hair swept up, my eyes lined sharp. Not to impress. Not to punish. Just to remind myself that I had already walked through fire, and survived. When I entered the venue, heads turned. I wasn't staff anymore. I wasn't Lucas's girlfriend. I was the ghost of a woman they had once overlooked, now fully alive. Lucas spotted me from across the room. He looked different, thinner. Nervous, despite the tailored suit and practiced smile. He walked over, drink in hand. Ellie, he said softly. You came. I did. A beat passed. I didn't think you would, he added. I didn't come for you. His mouth opened, then closed. I took a slow sip of sparkling water. Nice venue. I thought you'd like it. You always liked winter themes. I gave a faint shrug. Taste change. He swallowed. You look happy. I am. Silence again. But this one belonged to me. I just wanted to say, he continued, voice low, that I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish. I didn't know what I had until it was gone. I'm not gone, I replied. I'm just not yours. His eyes dropped to the floor. Do you think we ever could have made it work, if I had proposed sooner? No, I said honestly. Because you didn't just lose time. You lost me. I didn't stay long. As I left the building, I felt weightless. No regret. No anger. Just quiet closure. Outside, a car waited. Lee stepped out and opened the door before I could say anything. His presence was effortless. Steady as breath. How was it? He asked as we drove away. I turned to him, smiling. Over. He looked at me for a long beat. You look like someone who just finished a story. Maybe, I said. Or maybe I just started the right one. We didn't talk much after that. Just held hands in the dark, city lights casting shadows on our joined palms. And I realized. It wasn't about finding the right person. It was about finally being the right version of myself. Spring arrived with quiet confidence, painting the city in soft pastels. Cherry blossoms bloomed along the riverbank, and morning light filtered gently through our windows. I had always imagined the end of a story to feel like an exhale, an unraveling of all the knots and aches. But this didn't feel like an ending. It felt like breathing for the first time. One morning, while preparing tea, I noticed something different about Lee. He was unusually quiet, not in his usual calm, but thoughtful, like something heavy had been sitting in his chest. "Everything okay?" I asked, passing him a cup. He nodded, then looked at me with a steadiness I hadn't yet seen from him. "I've been offered a position abroad," he said. "A long-term post, Berlin. It's a 5-year contract." I froze. He didn't flinch, just waited for my reaction. "And?" I asked, heart beginning to race. "I haven't accepted yet," he said. "Because the only thing that matters is what you want." "What I want?" I echoed. He set the cup down. "Ellie, we entered this marriage as strangers. And somehow, you've become the most honest part of my life. I won't leave without asking, do you want to stay? Do you want us to become something more? Or would you rather part now, as people who gave each other healing, not hurt?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the world we had built together, quietly, respectfully, with care. My hand drifted to my necklace. Not the one Lucas gave me. The one I bought for myself. The woman I had become didn't belong to a man or a city or a past. She belonged to herself. And she could choose what came next. 1 month later, I stood at the airport. Not for a goodbye. For a beginning. Lee stood beside me, 2 suitcases in hand. His fingers brushed mine. "You sure?" he asked. I smiled. "I didn't follow you, Lee. I chose to walk beside you." He reached into his pocket, pulled out a simple gold band, not a proposal, not a declaration, just a symbol. "Then let's start again," he said. "This time, without arrangements. Just choice." I slid the band onto my finger. "Deal." As the boarding call echoed through the terminal, I took one last look at the city that had witnessed my heartbreak, my silence, and finally, my rebirth. And then I walked forward. Not to escape. But to expand. This was never a story about a woman rescued by love. It was the story of a woman who rescued herself. And then allowed love to earn its place beside her.